They called it the engine that won the war, yet few realized how dangerously close it came to never existing at all. In 1940, Britain's fate hinged on the roar of the Rolls-Royce Merlin, but behind the triumphant growl lay a perilous backstory of boardroom doubts and last-minute rescues. Could one overlooked decision from the 1930s have spelled doom for the iconic power plant that changed the course of aviation history? Well, at the dawn of the 1930s, Rolls-Royce was best known for its dignified luxury cars, prized by aristocrats and wealthy enthusiasts. Yet, as war clouds formed over Europe, the RAF needed a miraculous leap in engine design, something that could outpace Germany's relentless buildup. Rolls-Royce stepped forward with a liquid-cooled V12 called the Merlin, seeing as it was a bold solution to a looming crisis. From the very beginning, however, this seemingly modest project was up against more than just foreign adversaries. It faced skeptics at home, mechanical setbacks, and financial strains that almost buried it before it got off the ground. Now, the Merlin wasn't merely a piece of machinery. It was thunder bottled in aluminum and steel, a 27-liter liquid-cooled V12 capable of delivering well over 1,000 horsepower. It featured a 2-speed supercharger to help pilots harness power at both low and high altitudes. This gave British aircraft a critical edge in dogfights where split-second altitude changes could dictate life or death. With its pressurized cooling system and ability to handle high-octane fuel, the Merlin quickly earned a reputation as an engineering marvel. One that would power icons like the Hawker Hurricane, the Supermarine Spitfire, the Avro Lancaster, the de Havilland Mosquito, and eventually the North American P-51 Mustang. Now, time and time again, it proved itself more than just an engine. It was the beating heart of the Allies' aerial arsenal. Yet, raw horsepower alone wasn't what made the Merlin so revolutionary. Rolls-Royce engineers worked hand-in-hand with British chemists to perfect higher-octane fuels, allowing the Merlin to push compression boundaries without succumbing to engine knock. Meanwhile, the supercharger itself was refined through multiple stages to maximize efficiency across varying altitudes. This ensured that from sea-level scrambles to high-altitude interceptions, the Merlin responded with a smooth, steady surge of power when pilots needed it most. The engine's refinement also stood out. While other high-performance aircraft engines might shake themselves to pieces under extreme stress, the Merlin maintained a remarkable balance of power and reliability. Its lightweight aluminum alloy construction and meticulous attention to tolerances meant that crews could rely on it for mission after mission. Pilots praised its smooth throttle response, and ground crews appreciated how accessible it was for routine servicing, even if major repairs still required a skilled hand and plenty of spare parts. In the end, the Merlin's genius lay in its ability to blend brute force with everyday usability. It could roar through the skies with astonishing ferocity, yet it also offered the kind of reliability that was essential for large-scale wartime production. That sweet spot, staggering performance, married to consistent dependability, cemented the Merlin's place in history as an unstoppable power behind countless Allied victories. You enjoying the story behind the Merlin engine? Well, hit that subscribe button for more aviation deep dives. And do you have a favorite World War II engine? Well, drop it in the comments, because we might cover it next. Still, the Merlin's dazzling potential nearly died in the cradle. By the early 1930s, Rolls-Royce's Private Venture 12, or the PV-12 engine program, was burning money and testing everyone's patience. Critics inside the company questioned whether they should be chasing a high-performance liquid-cooled concept at all, especially one unproven in extended combat conditions. Government support was lukewarm, and some suggested investing in simpler air-cooled radials or refining older power plants instead of gambling on a new design. Spiraling development costs added to the tension. Prototypes were plagued by overheating, cracked cylinder blocks, and lubrication failures that forced test crews to repeatedly tear down engines after only a couple of hours of runtime. Each new fix introduced fresh complications, and at one point, the entire program teetered on the brink of cancellation. It said that the Rolls-Royce boardroom was split, with some executives ready to cut their losses, while others insisting that if the Merlin could be made reliable, then it would be critical and a national asset. Meanwhile, time was running out. Europe's political situation deteriorated by the day. Germany was modernizing its own engines, such as the Daimler-Benz DB601, which would power formidable fighters like the Bf-109. The RAF needed its own high-speed interceptors and needed them quickly. Engineers at Rolls-Royce worked under crushing deadlines, an atmosphere reminiscent of a high-stakes chess match against unseen opponents. Each mechanical setback felt like a lost piece on the board. Yet, this crucible of pressure also produced some of Merlin's greatest breakthroughs. For instance, the challenge of supercharging for multiple altitudes led to the now famous two-stage, two-speed supercharger system, a marvel of its day. Additionally, the British push for high-octane fuel synergy helped the Merlin achieve power levels that were unthinkable just a couple of years prior. Racing against time was nerve-wracking, but it also spurred an almost manic creativity. Teams refined each detail, from new cylinder head alloys to improved spark plugs, until the Merlin's potential finally began to crystallize. By 1935, the engine started showing glimpses of brilliance in test flights, but nonetheless, the project was still under scrutiny. Some Rolls-Royce insiders recount that a hair's breadth success with redesigned cylinder heads and advanced supercharger configurations saved the Merlin from a final boardroom veto. Had they failed, Rolls-Royce might have abandoned the concept or pivoted to less ambitious designs. Looking back, it's terrifying to consider how close the Allies came to never having the engine that would star in so many decisive battles. Now, when war finally exploded across Europe, the Merlin became a lifeline. Its first real proving ground was the Battle of Britain, an aerial clash in which the Spitfire and Hurricane, both Merlin-powered, confronted the might of the Luftwaffe. Now, despite the Spitfire's iconic status, it was actually the more numerous Hurricane that inflicted the bulk of British victories during those crucial months. Yet both relied on the same beating heart, the Merlin engine. In the swirl of dogfights above the English Channel, every ounce of horsepower and reliability counted. Pilots praised the engine's willingness to rev, its crisp throttle response, and its ability to sustain power at higher altitudes. The distinct Merlin roar soon became as much a symbol of Britain's resolve as the sound of Big Ben pealing through London streets. But fighter planes were just the beginning of the Merlin story. The Avro Lancaster carried 4 Merlins on missions that often lasted 8 hours or more, deep into the heart of enemy territory. Crews learned that they could limp home even if 1 or 2 engines took flak damage. Testament to the Merlin's resilience under fire. The de Havilland Mosquito, nicknamed the Wooden Wonder for its lightweight plywood construction, exploited the Merlin's power-to-weight advantage to zip past enemy defenses in a variety of roles. Bomber, night fighter, recon, you name it. Then came the North American P-51 Mustang, initially hampered by an Allison engine that lacked high-altitude performance. Swapping in the Merlin turned the Mustang into a phenomenon. Suddenly, Allied bombers had a long-range escort that could duel effectively with German fighters at altitude. This shift in tactics decimated the Luftwaffe's ability to prey on unguarded bomber streams. The momentum in the air war flipped decisively. Over and over, the Merlin proved its versatility, stepping into any role where it was needed. It was no longer just a British engine, it was a global game-changer. Beneath the string of impressive victories lay a series of near catastrophes and hidden dangers, one of which was the carburetor issue that struck whenever a pilot executed a negative G maneuver. Now, the sudden lack of fuel pressure to the carburetor could cause the engine to sputter or stall at a critical moment. Enter Beatrice Tilly Schilling, an engineer who devised a brilliantly simple fix, affectionately called Miss Schilling's orifice. Her modification helped regulate fuel flow and nearly eliminated the negative G cutout, saving countless pilots from a deadly power loss in tight dogfights. Another concealed drama was the sheer fragility of Britain's industrial base under constant bombing. Rolls-Royce factories worked around the clock, but the threat of German air raids loomed. If key plants were hit, Britain could lose its ability to produce Merlin engines at scale. That's why Rolls-Royce opted for a bold and controversial move, licensing Merlin production to the Packard Motor Car Company in the United States. Now, many considered this giving away crown jewel technology, while others recognized that it was the only surefire way to meet skyrocketing demand if Britain's factories were crippled. The Packard-built Merlins would prove indispensable not only for British aircraft, but for the American Mustangs that would eventually dominate the skies over Europe. What's more, the entire project hinged on a single pivotal moment in the mid-1930s. Facing spiraling development costs and uncertain results, Rolls-Royce's board almost pulled the plug on the Merlin. Insiders speak of an urgent push, engineers testing redesigned superchargers and cylinder heads late into the night to show just enough progress to secure the Air Ministry's support. Had that crucial demonstration fallen flat, the engine that would later help secure victory over the Luftwaffe might never have existed at all. The shocking truth? The Rolls-Royce Merlin's greatest triumphs often overshadow the razor-thin margins by which it survived its earliest days. Everything came to a head when the Merlin found its place in the North American P-51 Mustang. By merging American airframe ingenuity with British engine prowess, the Allies found a fighter that was capable of high-altitude performance and unparalleled range. No longer would bombers have to brave the final stretch to Berlin unescorted. The marriage of technologies signaled a turning point. The Luftwaffe's once formidable defensive perimeter cracked wide open. As more Mustangs poured off the production lines, thanks in no small part to the license-built Packard Merlins, the balance of air power shifted irreversibly. The Allies' daylight bombing raids became far more survivable, and the Luftwaffe's losses escalated. And German industrial centers found themselves increasingly vulnerable. One general famously declared, "The Merlin won us the skies." In that moment, every near failure, every midnight redesign, and every sleepless test run at Rolls-Royce seemed worth it. The engine had validated its existence on the grandest stage possible. Now, by the war's end, Merlin's engines had rolled off assembly lines in staggering numbers, over 150,000 produced in various marks. They equipped fighters, bombers, reconnaissance aircraft, and even experimental prototypes. In the final tally, the Merlin was arguably the single most important aero engine for the Allied cause, having touched nearly every critical air campaign from the Battle of Britain to the strategic bombing of Germany. With the conflict ending, jet engines took center stage, quickly eclipsing piston-powered flight in both speed and altitude capabilities. Rolls-Royce itself became a pioneer in turbojet development, spelling the gradual retirement of the Merlin from frontline service. Yet the story didn't end there. The post-war era saw aviation enthusiasts, warbird collectors, and historians all clamoring to preserve any Merlin-powered aircraft that they could find. Restoration groups sprang up around the globe, determined to keep the engine's legacy alive. Today, the distinctive purr of a Merlin at an air show is enough to send chills down the spines of spectators young and old. Now, in those few seconds, the modern world just seems to fade, replaced by the echoes of a time when the free world's fate relied on the throaty roar of a V-12. The Merlin stands as a testament to design evolution under tremendous pressure. Early prototypes produced about 1,000 horsepower, but later variants pushed past 1,600 horsepower with better supercharging, upgraded materials, and refined fuel systems. The continual improvement reflected the spirit of wartime innovation, incremental gains, hammered out in real time, that collectively transformed the engine from a question mark into a resounding exclamation point. It's difficult to separate the Merlin from the romance of aerial combat and the bravery of the crews who relied on it. An engine that started as an uncertain private venture became a global legend, an example of how near disasters can set the stage for greatness. The Merlin story underscores a crucial lesson. The margin between triumph and failure is often razor thin, dictated by last-ditch efforts, overlooked geniuses, and sheer unyielding determination. In the grand narrative of World War II, the Merlin is more than just a mechanical marvel, it's an emblem of the resilience that defined the Allied war effort. Even as jets roared onto the scene, the Merlin's legacy remained vivid, bridging the gap between the old world of biplanes and the new era of supersonic flight. Engineers, pilots, historians, they all see the Merlin as an ultimate testament to what can happen when an innovative design meets the brutal demands of total war. Many engines have come and gone, but few can claim to have played such a direct and emotional role in shaping history. The Merlin teaches us this, that true legends, they're not built in peace, they're forged under pressure and remembered for the difference they made. Hey, if the Merlin brought back memories for you or taught you something new, subscribe for more deep dives into the engines that shaped history.